Okay, so this is part two of the Candela video, and I don't know what happened, but it looks like at the 30-minute mark, some people came into the office building and it just stopped. Okay, so my apologies for having to make a second video. And I was at the part where I was reading the confirmation of birth in connection to our paternal grandmother, Aurora San Miguel Solis, okay? So I stopped at the part where the judge describes the daughter, our grandmother, being the legitimate daughter, fascinating in here, right? The legitimate daughter of, let's see, let me go back. Okay, so the daughter manifested as the legitimate daughter of this gentleman and his wife, Josefa San Miguel, who was born in this city the 23rd of August at 3 p.m. this year in the afternoon. And she was given the name Aurora San Miguel, that her grandparents, her paternal grandparents, who go by the name of Jose Maria San Miguel and Petra Gonzalez, and her maternal grandparents, Sixto San Miguel and Maria Agueda de Hoyos. And so the next sentence is essentially saying that there were two witnesses, Felix R. Sados and Antonio Sanchez, who was a single journalist or journeyman of this area. Signed by the judge, J. Martinez Antonio Sanchez. This document is, well, she was born 122 years ago. This document is from 1963, and it talks and it confirms what Cindy sent me to the T. Well, kind of to the T, because there's a name difference on the maternal grandparent side. Same name, but it's just been given a small little touch. What else do I have to say about this? The story is unfinished. There's more chapters that I feel need to be told. And I get this sense that my father always wanted to go to Candela, Mexico, because he absolutely adored his mother, and so did all the siblings. You just knew she was held up in this amazing fashion. And I can't help but think about my first interview with Mr. Enrique Ramon. And in this interview, which I may have mentioned in another video, he tells me, oh yeah, your grandmother had the same salt and pepper here, and she combed her hair the same way that you do. And he was remembering her from the 50s, right? And it's my feeling she loved dichos. She would love to say these sayings in Spanish, which were meant to educate. And it's so ironic, but I'm a huge fan of quotes, right? I love sending quotes to my daughters, Melanie and Maggie. And I've loved quotes since I was a teenager. I was a complete nerd back in the day, still am. And I keep thinking, she used quotes to educate her children and grandchildren, which is contemplate what you're doing, and here is something you can hold on to, which is game. What she was doing was giving her children game, right? Be smart about what's going on in the world. Don't be naive, don't be dumb, and also think about the consequences of your actions. And that's what quotes are there for. This video again, is about this new chapter in this wonderful love story. I don't know where it's going to take me, take us, but I'm excited about it. And once Mr. Cifuentes in Candela, Mexico gets back to me, I think being able to find out where she was born, I find it hard to believe that in a town of 1,600 people, the dates and the addresses of the residents would not be in there in some capacity. They've got to be there. And the big question is, how can I find those, or how can they find, because I'm obviously not in Mexico, but how can we acquire that information now in 2025 so it can be uploaded and shared? The homes in Laredo, and let me go over that one time with you in this video. These very humble homes in Laredo, Texas, tell one story, and the story is of our grandparents living in Laredo under those very challenging circumstances. And I don't want that to be the only part of this great love story. I want to go back to Candela, Mexico and say, what did they see in that town? What did they leave behind? Because that must have been painful, difficult, leaving your family in Candela, Mexico, this gorgeous sanctuary of nature and buildings and pre-colonial stuff. I mean, just unbelievable. What they left behind, what was there at the time, and what is there now, and who are these potential family members who we know were there conversos, that is, Jews who were forced to convert. Semita is actually created in Candela, Mexico in 2025, and I know this because when you go online, you will find the bakeries. You're like, oh, it's 2024, here's this bakery creating Semita, and Semite means Jew, and Semita is Jewish bread. I mean, how do you explain that other than there were Jews among the Spanish who arrived in Candela, Mexico? Why would they be making Jewish bread if they weren't Jewish in some way? In fact, there were very strict restrictions on how Semita bread could be baked. You couldn't use any type of lard connected to pigs. It had to be olive oil. But that for me is fascinating, how in 2025, Semita bread is still being produced and eaten by people, and it raises other questions. Do we have Jewish ancestors? Were they conversos? Were they landowners in Candela, Mexico? Is there land sitting out there? But beyond that, are any of those ancestors of the Spanish Empire? And if it can be determined that we do have family members who were confirmed Spaniards, citizens of the Spanish government, what rights do we have now or down the road to either claim, not necessarily citizenship, but is there any type of official certificate saying we're not citizens, but maybe we could get a green card to live in Spain for 6 months? My understanding is that the Spanish government stopped giving out citizenship documents to people because they were able to say, my ancestors came over from Spain and they landed in Mexico. They stopped doing that. But if there's some other option we have, that would be great to know. But it also is interesting because if we know our paternal grandmother was born in Mexico, there are many people who may say, listen, in my golden years, I would love to work part-time, volunteer in Mexico, but I can't do that without Mexican citizenship. And now in 2025, with there being many challenges between the government of Mexico and the United States, it is going to get harder, right? But do we have the ability to file for Mexican citizenship? because we have clear documents saying that our grandmother was born here. Okay, our paternal grandmother was born in Mexico. The documents are there. So for you, the person listening to this, these are questions that you should ponder and contemplate. If I am telling you right now that we have documentation that our paternal grandmother was born in Mexico, we know when, we even know the judge who confirmed her birth, are you going to think about maybe becoming a person who has dual citizenship because of that fact? Well, it's now a possibility. In another video, I talk about the accent added to our name. And I determined in that video that we're entitled to use the accent because our ancestors used the accent. Does it mean anything? No. But the more you know, the better informed you are when it comes to making personal decisions about how you sign your name, future goals and aspirations. And in many ways, I almost feel like she's giving us a gift. And the gift is, I also have a story. And telling the story would be really, really cool and fascinating. I think I get emotional because these are chapters that have never been explored before. Like, I feel like the Spanish explorers who landed on this continent in 1690 and before, and who had this obsession with continuously pushing ahead, pushing forward, finding those nuggets of gold, finding those opportunities. And many of their ancestors were not people living in castles, living in big mansions. They had to survive becoming migrant farm workers. Just think about that for 1 second. I think to myself at times, man, I gotta come to work. I gotta work in this office building, and the office building has air conditioning, and the office building has doors that are locked outside. It's accessible 7 days a week. And I think about our grandparents who had to work out in the fields picking pecans. And it puts a lot of things in perspective, like really fast. Number one, how blessed we are. Number two, how we should never take anything for granted. And number three, our ancestors set us up where they had the hard times, but they allowed us to live a very different life. I was not planning on having this emotional moment, but one of the great things about studying history is that in many ways it's like looking in the mirror and determining where do I come from, but in many ways, where are we going? And what kind of sacrifices should we be making for those who will follow us? And this project is about shedding light on these great stories and learning more about these individuals who made many, many things possible. So, look forward to future postings about Candela